In 1200 BC, the most powerful civilizations on Earth simply stopped existing. Not one, not two, all of them, at the same time. Within a single human lifetime, the entire world as humanity knew it vanished. Historians call it the Bronze Age collapse. It remains the greatest unsolved mystery in all of recorded history. And 3,200 years later, we still do not know exactly what happened. But we know this. One day, there was a merchant in a city called Ugarit. He was at his desk, writing letters to kings. His shelves were full of clay tablets. His trading routes stretched from Egypt to Afghanistan. His world was at its peak. And then nothing. His house burned. His tablets were buried. His city was destroyed and never rebuilt. Urtenu never came back. No one ever came back. This was not just one city. Across the entire eastern Mediterranean, from Greece to Egypt to Turkey to Syria, every palace, every empire, every trade route, every writing system collapsed. Within 50 years, all at once. But to understand what was destroyed, you have to understand what the world looked like before. Because this was not a primitive world, this was the most sophisticated, connected civilization humanity had ever built. The city of Ugarit sat on the coast of modern-day Syria. It was one of the world's greatest trading hubs. Copper from Cyprus, tin from Afghanistan, grain from Egypt, pottery from Greece, gold from Nubia. All of it passed through Ugarit. All of it was recorded on clay tablets by scribes who wrote in 5 different languages. Our merchant Urtenu was at the center of all of this. He traded copper ingots and wood. He received letters from the kings of Egypt, Assyria, Cyprus, and the Hittites. His contact list included the most powerful people in the ancient world. And he kept every letter, every single one, on clay tablets stacked neatly on shelves in his house. But sometime around 1200 BC, the letters started changing. They stopped talking about trade routes and copper shipments, and they started talking about something else entirely. The letters spoke of hunger. A drought had struck the entire region. Harvests were failing. One letter found in Urtenu's house reads, "In the land of Ugarit there is a severe hunger. May my Lord save it, and may the king give grain to save my life and to save the citizens of the land of Ugarit." The Hittite Empire, one of the 2 great superpowers of the ancient world, was begging Egypt for grain. The Hittites, who had fought Egypt to a standstill for decades, now wrote, "It is a matter of life and death. Send grain, we are dying." And then, out of the sea came the ships. Ancient sources called them simply the Sea Peoples. Where they came from is still debated. But what they did is not. They appeared first as raiders, then as armies, and then as a flood that no one could stop. King Amurapi of Ugarit, the last king, wrote desperately to the king of Cyprus, "My father, behold, the enemy's ships came here. My cities were burned. They did evil things in my country. My troops are gone. My ships are patrolling distant waters. The country is abandoned to itself. May my father know it." The letter was never sent. It was found still in the kiln, still unbaked, still waiting to be fired for delivery. The city was destroyed before the letter could leave. Ugarit burned around 1185 BC. The fire that destroyed the city also baked the clay tablets, preserving them for over 3,000 years. We know so much about Ugarit's final days because the catastrophe itself preserved the evidence. But Ugarit was just one city. At the same time, in Greece, the palace of Mycenaeans, seat of the legendary kings of Homer, burned and was abandoned. Its writing system, Linear B, disappeared entirely. Greece would not write again for 400 years. In Turkey, the Hittite capital of Hattusa, home to one of the 2 superpowers of the ancient world, was burned so completely that a thin black layer of ash is still visible in the ground today, right at floor level of its buildings. After the fire, the city was abandoned. Forever, in Egypt, the pharaoh Ramesses III fought off 2 massive attacks from the Sea Peoples barely. He recorded the battles on his temple walls. Egypt survived, but it never recovered. Within 50 years, the greatest empire in the ancient world had contracted into a shadow of itself. And then silence. After 1177 BC, the archaeological record shows almost nothing. The palace economies stopped. The trade routes went dark. The diplomatic letter systems ended. Populations collapsed. Some areas of Greece lost 90% of their people. It took some regions nearly 1,000 years to recover. For 2 centuries, historians and archaeologists have tried to answer one question: why? What could possibly bring down every major civilization on Earth simultaneously within a single lifetime? And the frustrating answer is we do not know. Not definitively. Not completely. The strongest evidence points to climate. Tree ring data, lake sediment analysis, and ancient pollen records all show the same thing. A severe, prolonged megadrought struck the entire eastern Mediterranean right around 1200 BC. Crops failed for decades. Famine spread. Populations began moving. Then there are the Sea Peoples. Historians still debate exactly who they were, but Egyptian records show massive coordinated sea and land attacks. Multiple civilizations were invaded at the same time. The Sea Peoples may have been refugees themselves pushed out of their own collapsing homelands by the drought, now turned desperate and violent. The real answer, the one most historians now accept, is that it was all of these things at the same time. Drought, famine, migration, internal rebellions, trade collapse, earthquakes in some regions. Each individual disaster would have been survivable. But together, hitting a world that was dangerously interconnected and totally dependent on complex trade networks, they created a cascade that no civilization could withstand. Which brings us back to Urtenu. Sitting at his desk in Ugarit, writing his letters, he watched the grain prices rise. He watched the familiar trade ships stop coming. He received letters from Hittite officials he had known for decades, now begging for food. He must have known something was terribly wrong. We do not know if Urtenu escaped. We do not know if he watched Ugarit burn, or if he had already fled. His alabaster chariot, pommel, a symbol of royal favor, a prestigious object, was left on the floor of his house. He did not take it. He either left in desperate haste, or he did not leave at all. In 1986, French and Syrian archaeologists began excavating a site in Ras Shamra, Syria, the ruins of ancient Ugarit. They found a house. An ordinary-looking house with cobblestone walls. But on the second floor, on collapsed shelves, they found 650 clay tablets. The entire archive of Urtenu preserved for over 3,000 years. Among those 650 tablets were letters from kings, trade records, diplomatic correspondence, and one tablet that made archaeologists stop. A letter describing the last days of Ugarit. The enemy ships, the burning cities, the desperate pleas for help. 3,000 years later, the words of a dying civilization. But the most haunting detail of all is this. One of the tablets found at Ugarit, never baked, never finished, reads only, "There is no food in our houses." It is believed to be one of the last things anyone ever wrote in Ugarit. The city fell before the letter could be completed. Sound familiar? Historians who study the Bronze Age collapse use one word consistently when describing it: globalization. The Bronze Age world was the most interconnected economy humanity had ever built, and that interconnection, its greatest strength, became the mechanism of its destruction. When one part of the system failed, the drought hit the grain supply, the trade routes that had fed everything else began to break. And when the trade routes broke, the palace economies that depended on them broke. And when the palace economies broke, the armies that protected everything else had nothing left to pay their soldiers. The historian Eric Klein, who wrote the definitive modern study of the Bronze Age collapse, put it simply. He said, "It was not unlike our own globalized world today. Remove one key element of our global supply chain, and others will begin to fail. Remove enough, and the whole thing comes apart." Back in Ugarit, back in the house of Rutenu, his tablets sat buried under rubble for 3,200 years. His letters to kings, his trade records, his last communications with a world that was ending. They survived because of the fire that destroyed everything around them. 3,200 years after the day Ugarit burned, archaeologists opened those shelves. And Urteno was still there, not in body, but in his words, in his letters, in the record of a life he lived in a world we can barely imagine, a world that vanished and left behind only the letters it never got to send. Our world today is more connected than the Bronze Age world ever was. The same drought, the same supply chain collapse, the same cascade of failures, could they happen again? History does not repeat itself, but it rhymes, and sometimes it rhymes very loudly.